Hi, welcome to another edition of Project Freedom United. I'm Marty Zients, and I'm joined today by Neil Squitieri. Neil's background includes being a senior manager with IBM, a C-level executive with several Fortune 500 companies such as Forbes magazine and H.J. Heinz. More recently, Neil has worked with the Strategic Energy Institute at Georgia Tech. Neil has done many hours of research in the field of green energy and has a unique perspective to share with our viewers today. Neil, welcome to Project Freedom United.
Thank you for having me today.
Great. So let's start out by me asking you, first of all, what are your major concerns with the green energy field at this point in time?
Well, I think my major concerns are just what's happening in America today. We talk about, I make no bones, I'll be very transparent. I'm a conservative and I'm a Republican. But what I'm attempting to present today is a very neutral look at what we're doing in green energy and possibly, in some small way, change the direction on what we're doing.
Okay.
You know that we worry about DEI in schools and we worry about CRT in schools. We spend a lot of time looking at what they teach our children. Well, they also teach our children that carbon fuels are bad. They also allow this presentation of what's going on in the energy field, and we have generations of children that really believe that the use of carbon fuels is bad. Well, let's be honest. We are where we are today as a civilization because of the Industrial Revolution, and carbon fuels played a big part in that Industrial Revolution. The children don't appreciate that. They don't realize that 80 to 85% of the products in your home are made of carbon fuels. Medicines, textiles, furniture, clothing. It's unbelievable how many products are generated from carbon fuels. Do we look at carbon fuels as the only energy of the future? No, that's ridiculous. And sooner or later, it will phase out. But the approach that we take today is an approach that carbon fuels are bad, and we're rushing to judgment and making all of these plans to quickly replace carbon fuels, gasoline, all of the related energies, and that's not a reasonable way of looking at it. Here's an example. I have a couple of samples here. We're all familiar with a gallon jug. Everybody's seen a gallon jug? A gallon of gasoline weighs approximately 6 pounds. That gallon of gasoline in most of the automobiles, average automobile, will take us 35 miles. If it's a small or a general SUV, it'll maybe take us 24, 25 miles. Even the brand new Corvette will get 22 to 23 miles on a gallon of gasoline. Then we have the replacement of what we're using today, or what we're trying to use today, which is EVs and lithium-ion batteries. This represents generally a size of what 6 pounds of lithium-ion would look like. In most EVs, 6 pounds of lithium-ion will take us about 1.2 to 2 miles.
That's fully charged.
Well, that's 6 pounds of lithium-ion. Understand that in an average model of a Tesla, the battery pack weighs any place between 1,070 pounds to, I think the high is somewhere around 1,700 pounds. Okay? But 6 pounds of lithium-ion, if that's the only thing you had on board, an EV, was a 6 pound pack, it would take you about 1.2 to 2 miles.
So the efficiency between gas and...
So the efficiency in gas and EVs, understand that, yes, it's a renewable energy source, and I credit Elon Musk with tremendous strides and advancements in lithium-ion. Lithium-ion is a 40-year-old technology, and I think Elon has done remarkably well in improving it. But I wonder, quite honestly, is that a solution for the future? We look at what we have today, and I have to ask, is that a solution to maybe an ill-defined energy problem, or maybe it's an undefined energy problem? We need a project in the United States, very, very similar maybe to the Manhattan Project, where we need all of the great minds together to try to figure out really what's going on in the energy world today. Also, as a sideline, most of us have ordered things from Amazon. When we get a lithium-ion battery pack from Amazon, it says it's a fire hazard. All right? Does that mean the lithium-ion is bad? No, but it may raise some questions on whether it's really the right way of going about it. So, you know, when you look at the energy, I wonder if carbon fuels is it's not the only way, but right now it's the best way to run America. And we ought to look at ways of advancing the EVs and alternate forms of energy.
So what are your concerns about where this thinking takes America and what can be done?
Well, I think lately, just recently, Congress had a committee on energy, and they calculated that the United States could spend between 30 and 50 trillion dollars on making America carbon neutral. And the scientists and what information they have currently state that that would probably realize itself into a 0.2% change in temperature. So 0.2 degrees of temperature for 30 to 50 trillion dollars. It's a very, very large investment. It makes no sense at all. It puts the average American in a situation that is economically not feasible, and the gains are very, very minimal. So I think from that perspective, we really ought to think with, should we spend $30 trillion on 0.2 degrees? Or should we take maybe 10% of that, maybe 3 trillion, maybe 5 trillion, and spread our technology to other countries, and see if we can help them make the advancements that America has made in lowering our emissions, and see how that affects the world globally. Because don't forget, America has maybe 350 million people. That's less than 5% of the population. Us becoming carbon neutral, it's a climate change. It's global climate change. It's not the American climate change. We have a situation where the government is backing EVs. They've spent a lot of money helping Elon create Tesla, and it's a remarkable change in a company. And again, you cannot take anything away from Musk and the advancements he's made in EVs, in lithium ion. He's done a remarkable job. But the government's backing a technology. Not only have they backed the creation of Tesla, they've also given Americans a $7,500 tax credit. So if you buy most of the EVs that are on the market today, you get a $7,500 tax credit. That's backing a technology. Is that the right thing to do? Let's be honest. And if we look back on history, most things that the government's backed have not really worked out. Solinga is one of them. There's many other instances in the infrastructure plan that Biden created. He put a ton of money into solar energy and made a couple of billionaires out of some of the people that were in control of these companies. And we haven't really produced any solid effects on how it affects the United States. So I think we have to take a look at whether does the government make decisions on energy, or do we make decisions on energy? Does the marketplace control what's going on in energy. I think our history shows that if the market creates it, it's a more efficient way of going about it. Well, we look at trying to make us carbon neutral. We look at the creation of the lithium-ion batteries and what people perceive to be a green energy as far as an EV is concerned. They don't take into consideration that mining these rare metals and minerals is a very emission producing process. In fact, I don't think you can get a mining operation going in the United States today without all of these regulations. It would take 10 or 15 years to get all the permits and all the permissions to mine. The AMA, and in this context, the AMA stands for the American Mining Association, has given us statistics on what they believe, because all of these metals are made from China, in Africa. They've given us estimates of the emissions that are created during this mining process. When you take those emissions into consideration, and also the human trafficking and the slaves that are in some instances mining these minerals, you would have to drive an EV around 75 to 100,000 miles before it became neutral, carbon neutral. And then you're confronted with a serious issue. The serious issue is around 100,000 miles, the battery packs need replacement. Those battery pack replacements run anywhere between $10,000 and $17,000, $18,000. And then you have to recycle them. If you've ever recycled or tried to recycle a lithium-ion battery and brought it to, as an example, Home Depot or Lowe's, they'll take the small lithium-ion batteries, but the 54-volt batteries, most Home Depots won't even take for recycling because it's too much of a hassle. So, we're looking at a situation where I doubt very strongly if it's really carbon neutral in the short term to drive an EV, and then we have a creation of tons, of many tons, thousands and hundreds of thousands of tons of lithium-ion battery packs, and what do we do with them? So, I mean, that's a serious consideration when we look at those amounts of product that we have to have recycled. And then you have to take a look at China is very, very heavily involved in EVs. China is so involved in EVs, and since they don't have that much carbon fuel, all right, China is opening up 1 to 2 new coal-fired power plants a month. And those coal-fired power plants are solely for the purpose of looking into the future and saying if all of their vehicles were EVs and they had to charge them, so they needed the power generation, it's unbelievable the countless amount of coal-fired power plants that China's creating.
So are you saying that with all the push toward green energy, we still have to find a way to create the electricity to power the EVs? Exactly.
And China has, because it has very, very large assets in coal, has decided to generate and to create 1 to 2 new power plants every month. Okay? So if we continue to look at the green energy deal as just the United States and forget about the rest of the world, we're not making any progress. We're actually moving backward.
But we are making a lot of wealthy people in our country, and the taxation that's necessary to create the money to fund the green energy is going to put an impact on the United States population, the working class.
We're making some people rich, but that's not a bad thing. We live in a capitalist society. I think what Musk has done is, like I said many, many times, has been just an amazing progress in technology. But it's not the only progress. Why haven't we looked more on bettering our hybrid technology for automobiles, right? We've lowered emissions so far that we have many, many ways of going about lowering emissions even further with hybrid technology. And I think that may be a way, as a stopgap, that may be a way to use right now, and then slowly with the market generating its direction, let's have the market figure out the best way of going about it. Not the government, not Elon, not forcing automotive companies like General Motors and Ford to get into EV production, but let the market make their own decisions. Ford lost almost $3 billion last year on EV production.
It's a lot.
So it's a lot of money.
Okay, so
I mean, also we have to look at how we're going to charge the EVs that we have. Currently, America produces somewhere in the neighborhood of 4.6 terawatts of power. That's the whole general American power grid, okay? An EV, an average EV that drives 15,000 miles a year, uses about as much energy as a small two-family home. That has to be charged. I don't see anywhere in plans, I don't see any infrastructure plans in production or on the drawing board that's going to create maybe another 2.5 to 3 terawatts of power. So how are we going to charge all of these EVs if we move in that direction? We're going in one direction, we're creating EVs, but we're not going in any other direction to power them. So I think that's a serious, question on how responsible we are in this creation of EVs.
that's interesting. I had read an article that said there was a company going into business to produce lithium battery packs, and the energy demand was so high that they had to build a coal-fired power plant to produce the energy to produce the lithium batteries.
Well, one of the little articles,
And it goes back to what
Right.
China's so.
exactly, and one of the articles was talking about making EVs, making semi-trucks, all right, powered by lithium ion. Well, if a semi-truck was powered by lithium ion, it would need two 8,000-pound battery packs. If you had a general 18-wheeler depot where you were doing trucking totally controlled by EVs, they state that you would need a small coal-fired power plant, just to have enough power to keep those semis on the road. It's an interesting concept. Again, I don't think we've planned, okay? I think we really need to have, and this should be run by private enterprise. I think we need to have a large Manhattan-type project, okay, to study the environment, to study the technology, and to figure out a more economical and more phased approach to how we're going to deal with it. We've listened to Al Gore and all of the green energy gurus talk about we've got 5 years, we've got 7 years, we've got 4 years. The world is coming to an end. The oceans are going to rise and flood out our coastline. Let's stop with the hyperbole and let's get down to the real facts. Let's find out really what we have to do strategically, intelligently, in a planned manner.
Well, we still have glaciers. The polar bears haven't disappeared, and the water hasn't risen in flooded Florida. So I guess some of the predictions that they made over the last 20 years have not come true.
Well, I mean, I'm not denying that there's such a thing as climate change. I mean, to be a climate change denier in this day and age would be ridiculous, okay? But I am a reasonable individual that looks at things in a very scientific approach. And I don't think we have the science and the technology down pat currently to figure out really what's the proper way of going forward,
Okay.
right? Which helps America and helps all of the civilians in America, all of the people, without causing a financial burden. I mean, we also have on the agenda wind. Now, we've all seen what happened in February in 2021 in Texas, where the windmills froze, and for 10 days, more or less, there were hundreds of thousands of people that were out of power. Wind is nice, but it's not a reliable source. And then we forget about what the effects of the windmills have. People don't realize, because nobody talks about it, that hundreds of thousands of birds are killed every year with the windmills. In fact, there's estimates of last year in 2023, 20 eagles were killed. And that's only the carcasses and what remnants they're left behind that they can find. It's conceivable more were killed. Why don't we question ourselves, where's the Audubon Society? Where's Greenpeace? Where's all of these environmental organizations? Why aren't they coming out and stating what we're doing to wildlife? Most of the wildlife that are being endangered happen to be on the endangered species list. But no one hears about that. Lately, there has been some things in the press, which I'm very, very happy to see and hear, about what happened to, whales and porpoises are beaching themselves in areas in the Northeast where they're putting up large amounts of windmills. I think it's time to take a close look at those windmills and see if that's really the way to go. Plus, everybody's aware you can't recycle those blades. And if you try to recycle them, it's expensive, and it also creates a lot of emissions. So I don't think that's the way to go.
Neil, why don't we look at solar panels?
I think solar panels are a wonderful energy source. I think the energy it creates are free. I think the problem that we have is, number one, 95% of the solar panels are created by China. Now, people who sell the solar panels will tell you they're made in Indonesia, they're made in Vietnam, they're made in a number of countries, but the factories are owned by the Chinese. So we're embracing solar energy, but we have yet to be successful in creating a cost-effective manufacturing facility in the United States that can create solar panels at the level of production that we'll need. So the solar panels are actually helping our political enemy, China, by giving them large amounts of money by investments. There's also concerns that energy in the Americas should be controlled by central sources. All right, diversing energy with the solar panels alone, right, takes the power grid somewhat out of our control. And the power grid is a strategic resource of America, and we have to look at more strategic ways of increasing our energy, not dispersing them throughout the country, particularly in the Southwest, like Florida here, where I would say, 5% of the homes that you pass on the roads have solar panels. Okay, so I think in general, again, the government's back to technology. They give large tax breaks to people who put them in their homes, and generally speaking, and I always laugh at this, but Florida's population is is a number of senior citizens. Well, if you're a senior citizen, you're 65 or 70 years old, and you put solar panels on your house, whether you pay for them outright or take the loans that they offer you, it's going to take you 15 to 20 years, right, to get a return on investment on the solar panels. So yeah, you're helping you may be improving the energy consumption in that area, but you're definitely not improving the financial health of the people who buy them, because it does take them 15 to 20 years to get your return on investment. So if you're retired and you're putting solar panels up, your children are going to benefit, not you.
You know, just curious, what are the dangers and hazards of having battery storage for solar panels on the house? The panels produce the energy. There's a large battery maybe somewhere in the garage that holds that energy for when the skies are cloudy and the panels aren't being used to charge. What's the danger?
Well, there's a number of ways that the solar companies install the solar panels in a home. Some homes, but either financial or just where they perceive to be the best approach for their house, they just put the panels up. The panels are connected to the power grid from FPL, in the case of Florida. And if it stores the power, right, you'll use the power from the solar panels, and sometimes you'll take energy from the grid because you're not producing enough, and sometimes sometimes your solar panels will go into the grid, the excess power, and you'll get money back. Some homes put battery packs in. The purpose of the battery packs are for, in case of a hurricane or a power failure, the battery packs can supply power to the home like a generator would. And those are lithium batteries. Those lithium batteries have the same concerns about any battery pack that have warnings about fire hazards. I don't see that it's a major concern, but there are concerns. And as far as insurances are concerned, if you put solar panels with batteries on your home, right, there is going to be a upcharge for your insurance, because it's going to cover some of the liabilities, potential liabilities involved in the batteries. Well, I mean, we talk about energy, but what we don't talk about is we don't talk about nuclear energy. It seems to be a topic that I don't think in the last 2 or 3 years I've heard one article or one segment on a TV news program or a 60 Minutes about progressing nuclear power. We talk about green energy. We talk about efficient energy. We talk about energy that does not create emissions. But we never talk about nuclear energy. Nuclear energy has no emissions. It's a remarkably clean source of energy. But I've yet to hear in the last few years any progress. Why? Because there are radicals within the green energy environment that don't like nuclear power, that don't want to embrace the power of the nuclear power plants. And I think that's very, very short-sighted, because I think, quite honestly, that's going to be one of the major ways in the future of producing the power that we need in the United States and creating the emission-free environments that we want to see worldwide. So, I mean, I'd like someone to talk about, right, what are we doing about nuclear power, and how do we intend to place it in our everyday life more than we have today.
Where would you place the investment in developing nuclear power versus developing lithium or new battery technologies? Do you think that the move away from nuclear and why it's not being discussed has to do with the investment to build a nuclear power plant?
Well, like I mentioned before, if we tried to mine the rare earth metals and minerals necessary to create lithium-ion batteries, the regulations we have would probably take 10 to 15 years to get a mining operation started. I hesitate and I fear what it would take to produce a new nuclear power plant today. The regulations and the hurdles that the government would put on it. I'm not trying to bypass the safety regulations or anything of that nature, but I think we have to take a serious look at it. I don't know, and I don't think there's anybody in America that knows for sure what's the best way of creating our energy in the future. I do know that right now we've cherry-picked the low-hanging fruit, EV batteries, windmills, solar panels. I mean, all of these things which are, a great improvement, but they were all low-hanging fruit. There has been no major technology put into research on what really is the way to move forward. I think the only automotive company that's made some strides in research has been Toyota so far, all right, and, on the battery front, and they're looking heavily and been quite successful early on in using solid-state batteries, okay? That's an improvement. That's something that hasn't been done before. And that's just one company. If the technological companies around the globe got together and unified, right, I think we can create what we're all looking for is a safe and climate-friendly environment for the whole globe. But we need everybody to get together and help us make decisions.
Well, Neil, this has been a great overview for our viewers of the green energy question, the green energy field, just green energy in general. But I think based on what I've heard today, I'd like to see us revisit this maybe with a part 2 and possibly even a part 3, where we could take a deeper dive into maybe drill down on 1 or 2 particular subjects in the green energy field. How would you feel about coming back for that?
Yeah, I'd appreciate that much. I think, and I want to make it very clear, I'm not against EVs. I'm not against solar panels. I'm not even against wind. But I think the approach that we've taken in haste is not the correct approach. I think what we've done is remarkable in our strives to get something working. But I think it's been the government pushing technology, the government pushing solutions. Again, I say it's either an ill-defined problem or an undefined problem. I laughed at one of the technologies that you may hear of is we're talking about going to different planets. And when we talk about going to different planets, we're talking about inhabiting those planets. And in the process of inhabiting those planets, I'm sure most of us have heard that we're going to use these atmospheric generators, what I would call a shake and bake. We're going to make a shake and bake colony on Mars or some other planet. We have these large atmospheric generators. Well, think about that for a second and mull over that in your mind. If we can create an atmospheric generator to create an atmosphere on Mars where there is none right now, why couldn't we tweak that atmospheric generator to create and fix the atmosphere of Earth? If you can create an atmosphere out of nothing, why couldn't you correct the atmosphere we have currently, right, and fix it? No one talks about that. They just think that we're going to create an Earth in a segment of Mars and we're going to generate the atmosphere. If that technology did exist, why would we use it for a creation of an atmosphere on Mars? Why wouldn't we use it for bettering the atmosphere on the Earth?
Or controlling hurricanes and violent weather outbursts.
So, we're not doing anything like that. That's probably far off in the future. But that's just one of the ways that people have thought about things, but we really haven't put it together into a cohesive strategy.
As a final thought, I had read in a journal that scientists have discovered that a volcanic eruption puts more carbon into the atmosphere in one eruption than man has since he's been on this earth. And I find that interesting. Nobody's talking about capping volcanoes because obviously it wouldn't be possible. So as much as we do to stop carbon emissions, there's probably 30 or 40 active volcanoes in the world that are constantly being able to put more carbon in the air than we can overcome by using electric vehicles. So it's been great talking to you. Thank you for sharing your insights, your research, your knowledge, and we'll come back for part 2, possibly part 3, as we seek to illuminate and give our viewers some knowledge of what's happening in the green energy field.
I want to thank you for inviting me,
Thank you, Neil.
and I appreciate it.
Thank you.